first of all, welcome. I'm happy to have you all here today and appreciate you taking the time and to come hear me speak about our strategic plan as a system. Now, during the last, probably about 2 years, the National Association of System Heads, or NASH, has been discussing the power of systems. In fact, we had a phone call with them on Wednesday to talk about how we can collaborate. And frankly, there's a lot of overlap with our goals and their goals and potential for funding to help support some of the things we want to do. But really today, I'm here to talk about the power of our system, the power of the SIU system. But before I get into the strategic plan, one of the things I want to do is provide a few highlights from the last couple of years. I should note, in every case, we have really made some progress during the last 2 years, but we still have a long way to achieve our goals, thus the need for this strategic plan. First, navigating through a global pandemic. Whenever I tell anybody I started on March 1st, 2020, they laugh and say, boy, that must have been awful. And I say, you know what? I was really blessed, because I came to a place with a great amount of healthcare expertise, a fantastic school of medicine that provided us advice throughout this entire pandemic that allowed us to manage through it, I think, much better than anybody anticipated. It allowed us to do more things in person more quickly because of the advice that we got. In fact, SIU across the system, last we looked at it, had the lowest infection rates of any of the universities in Illinois. So we managed to keep ourselves safe. And a lot of that really came down to individual responsibility. So it was really every faculty member, every staff member, and particularly our students, who did the right thing throughout the last couple of years that allowed us to do, again, a lot more in person and to avoid the high infection rates. In fact, every time when we came back for in-person classes, the longer we were in-person classes, our infection rates tended to go down, which again went completely against what a lot of people thought was going to happen, and frankly was different than some other institutions. So again, thank you for everybody who did their part during that global pandemic. Second thing that we heard at the beginning of the pandemic is that this was going to kill enrollment. But if you look across the SIU system, particularly looking at new students, we've increased by 26% the size of our freshman class from where we were in fall 2019 to fall 2021. Now, I'm a data guy, so I've looked at institutions across the country. I've not yet found one anywhere close to that high of an increase. In fact, for the most part in higher education, those predictions that the pandemic would affect enrollment, cause downturns, has come true. That is what has happened, but it simply hasn't happened here. But if we continue to see the growth in new students, we continue to focus on retention, we will see increases in the future. In fact, across the system, we actually were up slightly on enrollment this year, and SIUE was one of only 3 public universities in the state that actually had an enrollment increase this year. So again, moving in a very positive direction during a difficult time. Second thing that we heard was that this was certainly going to hurt the financial position. It was going to hurt fundraising. It was going to hurt a lot of different things. One of the things that we saw was actually record days of giving, both at SIUE and SIUC. When I came in 2020, we hit, I think, about $1.5 million in our day of giving, and I thought that was fantastic. And this year we hit $3.5 million. So more than doubled the amount we got during the day of giving in just 2 years. We also saw an increase of 30% in the endowment during the last fiscal year, or $52 million across the 2 foundations. A pretty dramatic increase in that as well. So again, positive things happening from a fundraising standpoint, where again, people thought during a pandemic we would not be able to raise money the way we usually did, and we actually did better. We saw increased state support. Obviously, those of you who lived in Illinois for a while do not take that for granted. We've had bad periods when it came to state support, but that has not happened more recently. We have a 5% supplement coming for this fiscal year, 5% for next year. In addition, we got $3.5 million for a project in Belleville at the former Lindenwood campus that involves both campuses involved with that. The Farm Family Research Initiative got another $200,000. That's also one of our main things. And then IBHE's Behavioral Workforce Training Center, which the School of Medicine is taking the lead on, got $10 million. So while that doesn't directly come to us, it certainly supports some of the work that we're doing. So across all of it, we have to be very fortunate with the state support we've had, and that certainly improved our financial position. And in fact, again, financial position was one that people expected to go down. And after several years where we really were declining in most of the things you would look at to look at financial health, we've actually seen the net position across the system has increased pretty dramatically over the last 3 years. Also, unrestricted cash has risen even more dramatically to a high point in December of 2021. So we've really turned around both those key indicators of financial success. Now, I will say we're not where we need to be on financial success either. But this has helped in improving our bond rating. So our bond rating has gone up as a result of the improved financial position. Now, we're not at AAA yet, but we're out of the junk bond rating, so that's a good thing. Stable is good, certainly better than we were before. So again, still work to do on that, but this is one where I think if you had told me 2 years ago this is where we would be today, I would have taken it, probably would have taken a little bit less than that, given what we thought was going to happen during the pandemic. Oh, I should point, before I move on to this, I forgot to mention, what this has helped us do is actually increase salaries. As you know, we had a 2% salary increase across the system this past year. That's the highest across the system we've had since 2014. Clearly not enough, and clearly a long way to go to where we need to be, but the financial success we've had allows us to continue to put money into salary increases, which is critically important, particularly related to Goal 5. Next thing is our Office for Community Engagement and Institute for Rural Health. These were established by the Board of Trustees back in July. We have interim directors, Dr. Stacy Grundy and Jeff Franklin. Jeff gave a really great presentation yesterday to the board about the work doing here. But this is critical to us having an impact on the people of Illinois, and we have already seen evidence of that impact just in the short period of time that these two offices have been in existence. Now, we'll also discuss this a little bit more later, but our commitment to anti-racism has been a key thing for us. This has been seen in a number of different ways. Certainly our commitment to new leadership. We now have chief diversity officers on each campus, and at the system level, all of whom are part of the leadership teams. We also see chief diversity officers in many of the colleges. Again, this is not one where I've seen most institutions have made such a commitment to leadership and anti-racism, diversity, equity, inclusion as we have here at SIU. We've had ongoing conversations of understanding, which we started back in June of 2020. We changed we did the campus climate survey just recently, and again, thank you to all of you who participated. I will tell you, we had a goal of a 50% faculty and staff response rate. When we had the first call about that, everybody said, we're never gonna get 50%. Dr. Caldwell kept going, let's try. We got 53%. So again, we kind of consistently exceed what people expect us to do, and that type of feedback will be critical in determining what we do going forward. Changing in our scholarship programs, again, a lot of schools started to go test optional admissions. We also went test optional on scholarships. Again, we know the biases that exist within standardized test scores, and frankly, performance in high school has always been a much, much better predictor of college success. So this makes sense in a lot of different ways. Changes in our hiring practices and searches has also helped us to recruit better and more diverse group of candidates. And we have established an ADEI scorecard, which will help us assess how we're doing in each areas, whether it's recruiting, retention, salaries, all types of different things, so we can hold ourselves accountable going forward. Related to new leadership. So when I got here, people said we have way too many interims. That was a common theme we heard over and over again, and we're starting to change that in a number of different ways. We've had a number of successful searches, both at the campus levels and at the system level. You know, during my time, I've been involved directly with 4 of those searches for the 2 chancellors and for the 2 vice presidents who you see there. I will say it's been an interesting experience because we've had to also change the way we do searches. In March of 2020, I said to the board chair, Phil Gilbert, I will never hire somebody that I don't meet face-to-face. 3 of them I hired without meeting face-to-face. So I had to change the way I did things. And it worked out really, really well. So all of us had to adjust what we thought was normal to something different. And because of that, we were really successful. I will say in 2020, during that spring semester, I was watching what was going on around the country. Almost every institution shut down their searches. It's impossible. We can't do it. We moved forward not only with the hiring of Chancellor Lane, but we moved forward with the search for the new vice president, Girish Gupchup. So we actually moved forward where most places just stood still. And so I'm very proud of that. I will say, in all 4 of these cases, we also got our first choice. That's not something you take for granted, and have been involved with searches for a long time. So to be able to get the person we really wanted is a testament to everybody. As I often say during searches, it's not just my role, but it's all of you who convinced them that this is a place they want to be, and you did a great job on that. Finally, we found ways to establish more cross-campus collaboration, and certainly the strategic planning process was a great example of that. We had over 150 people that were part of either different working groups, involved with the strategic planning committee, involved in some way, shape, or form really directly in the process. We also had about 4,000 people who responded to our survey online. So lots of participation in developing this plan. This is a first for SIU as far as I know. I don't think we've ever had a plan that involved as much kind of buy-in from everybody throughout this entire process. And as Chancellor Lane often talks about with the plan here in Carbondale, this is your plan, not my plan. In fact, you may be surprised how little I had to do with developing this plan. I trusted my colleagues and they did a fantastic job. So while I provided input, this is largely a plan that was developed by the people who were involved in this process. So I thank them. I thank Dean John Politz, Dr. Lakeisha Butler, and Vice President Girish Gupchub, who really provided the leadership for this. But there were a lot of people involved, and so thank you for that. Now, as I present the plan, a couple things to keep in mind. These goals really all overlap. So sometimes we talk about it as 6 distinct areas, but as you'll see, so much of what we do in each area affects another area. And so we understand that, and that's not a bad thing, that's actually a good thing. It's also important to keep in mind this is a system plan, not a campus plan. And I had to remind people of that many, many times. In fact, the biggest part of input I had was, no, take that out. That's a campus thing, not a system thing. We need to be focused on things that are system level. And a lot of that means working on collaboration between the campuses, us providing support from the system level for initiatives that will help out the campuses. So how do we actually work together? How do we provide support for the things that you need to do to be successful? That's really a focus of a strategic plan at a system level. And I will say, as we go forward with the campuses, each of them will have their own strategic plan, and that's a good thing. And some of that will overlap with this, but there will also be some differences at times. And as we talk about when we meet every week as a group of leaders across the system, we should be the same when it makes sense to be the same, and we should be different when it makes sense to be different. And so sometimes being different will be okay, and I'm certainly supportive of that. I will also warn you up front as we go through these slides, I am not going to read them to you. I'm sure that's disappointing. I trust your ability to read, and the strategic plan is available for you to read in all of its detail. Really what I hope to do today is more provide an overview and a kind of 40,000-foot level view of what I see in the strategic plan and what I think our priorities are based on what's there. But again, I won't be reading everything on every slide. Our top priority is our students. It always must be our students, so it's always appropriate that that's our first goal. And our priority is to provide them with the best educational experiences possible. Now, like many of our system goals, there will be unique activities on each campus, and that's a good thing. But we also want to find ways through system-wide collaboration to expand opportunities for students and improve their overall experience. Now, some examples that are embedded in these objectives. One is the SIU System Flex program. This is really in Objective 1. And the idea behind this is to provide more opportunities for students to take classes from across the system. This is something that's not uncommon. Other systems do it. In fact, other universities collaborate who aren't even part of the same system by providing students with an opportunity to take classes from another institution. This is valuable in a number of different ways. It allows students to learn from the expertise maybe of a faculty member from another campus, to take a class that's not available on their campus. It also allows them to interact with students on another campus. It also increases degree attainment. So sometimes the class they need to finish may not be available as quickly or when they need it on their own campus. If they can take it from the other campus, they can get to their degree more quickly, all of which is important for us. Another thing that's embedded in all of this is what I call share what works. A lot of times we're doing things on each campus that are successful, and we're monitoring that success. Whether it's helping us with increasing graduation and retention rates for different demographic groups. It's helping us with student advising. It's an approach to career counseling. It's something related to industry partnerships, research experiences, all kinds of different high-impact practices. When we find something that works, we should find ways to see if it will also work on the other campus. So that means we've got to be talking to each other on a more regular basis about what initiatives we're doing and where we're seeing success, and maybe sometimes where we're not, and so we don't copy something that's not working at another campus. If we do that well, it means we'll be able to, across the system, attract more students, see greater student success in terms of retention and graduation rates, greater student satisfaction, and just as important, greater success after graduation. Those are what our ultimate goals are. Goal theme 2 is anti-racism, diversity, equity, and inclusion, which I mentioned just previously. I will say in May of 2020, across the country, universities reacted to the murder of George Floyd, and many people we're concerned that once that moment had passed, things would return to normal and there'd be no progress made at those institutions. And frankly, as I look across higher education, I see that happening in many places. At SIU, we're determined to be different. Now, why is this important? It's because we recognize that inequities exist in higher education today. If you look at university presidents, 80% of us are white and 70% are male. Senior leadership, 87% is white and 60% is male. Full professors, 80% are white, 68% are male, 53% are white males. Now, none of this mirrors the demographic data that exists in our country. It's not even anywhere close. I will say we're better than Fortune 500 companies, but that's not really something to brag about because their data is truly awful. So it's hard when we look at this data to say that inequity does not exist and we don't need to make changes in the way we do things. Moreover, when we look at our students, equity gaps, when we look at retention, graduation rate, exist at almost every institution. There's really only a handful of institutions across the country that do not have equity gaps. Now, we made a public commitment to be an anti-racist organization, and we're the only system that I know of that has done that, and there's few higher education institutions in general that have. Now, what does that mean? And I'm asked that a lot. It means being active in addressing and changing areas where structural racism and bias exists and where we fall short of true equity. So some examples of things that we plan to be doing. Examining our policies, procedures, and practices. Those who've been in higher education know that one of our favorite things to say is, we've always done it this way. Well, always doing it this way has got us the data that we just talked about. We need to be doing things differently. We need to look at ways we can do things better. And from my past experience, I found many examples when we did things better, we saw different results. Improving our ADEI education for all members of our community. That includes our faculty, staff, and students, and providing them additional opportunities. We certainly want to continue conversations of understanding, very open and frank conversations about the issues that we face. Again, there's not many institutions I've seen that are doing that as public a way as we are at SIU. Looking for areas of inequity through our campus climate surveys I talked about earlier, as well as the data that we will see on the scorecard relative to faculty, staff, and students. So where do we see the greatest inequities? Implementing programs to improve recruitment and retention of diverse groups of faculty, staff, and students. If we do that well, there we go. If we do that well, we will see fewer equity gaps when we look at our data relative to faculty, staff, and students, and a greater sense of belonging for all members of our community. And as I've said several times, I believe we can be a national model in this area. We have the right people and places at all levels, and we are the right place and at the right time to accomplish something significant. If we're able to do that, that not only raises our national profile in ways that will be helpful to SIU, but frankly, the things we learn here could be helpful to all of higher education and change those numbers I talked about earlier. Goal 3 is related to community impact. As a public institution, we have an obligation to not only serve our students, but to serve our region. And there are a number of communities, as we know, in our region that can benefit from collaboration with the SIU system, and frankly, we can benefit from those collaborations as well. Now, some examples. I talked about the Office for Community Engagement. That is really designed to bring together the resources and expertise of people across the system to help communities, particularly distressed communities in our region. The Institute for Rural Health is also looking at areas of strengths across our system, which we have many in the healthcare area. There's few systems that have really as many outstanding healthcare-related programs as we do here. And we hope by doing that and working together, we can improve health outcomes and reduce health inequities in the region, expand the healthcare workforce, and develop programs that address the unique healthcare needs of our region. We also want to be active in supporting local business development and economic growth. That will also help the region out. We currently do this, and we have lots of great examples of where we've done that, but we can continue to find ways by working together to expand our activities and use expertise from across the system. Finally, we want to be able to collaborate in order to improve educational opportunities across the lifespan so that people have more access to education throughout their lives. If it's done well, we should see a positive growth and improvement in the quality of life in our region and expand opportunities for our students as well as our faculty and staff. Goal 4 relates to research, creative activity, and partnerships. Obviously, across the system, we have a commitment to research and creative activity. It's an important part of the work of our faculty and many of our staff. And Importantly, it contributes to the experience of our students. The goal in the plan is to expand opportunities and grow in this area from collaborations across the system and partnerships with external groups. Again, our focus at the system level is where can we collaborate, how can we work together? Some examples of where we think we can do this is increasing opportunities for faculty and others to find those common research interests. As I was saying the other day, I can't remember how many times it's simply a conversation with a faculty member with a similar interest has led to 5, 6, 7 journal articles and a whole line of research that wouldn't have happened if we just hadn't had that interaction. So how can we bring faculty from both campuses together and find those common interests? Improving the ease of obtaining and administering grants and external contracts. That's a struggle on most campuses. Are there ways we can work together to make that process easier? And again, increase the collaboration on some of those grants and external contracts. Share resources that support research and creative activity. Sometimes we have resources available on one campus that's not available at the other campus. Is there ways to expand access to those resources? Facilitate connections with potential external partnerships. Again, we do a lot of this on each individual campus, but there's also opportunities to work on partnerships that would go across the system. And finally, expanding opportunities for collaborative PhD programs. This is one clearly that not only benefits the students, and clearly would by having access to the expertise on both campuses, but I can certainly say as a faculty member, having the opportunity to work with PhD students certainly improved my work as a researcher, and I wouldn't be where I am today without them. So having that opportunity for more faculty will be helpful. If it's done well, we should see growth in research and creative activity. This includes obtaining more external grants, and we also want to see particularly growth in collaborative activities. We want to see expansion of external partnerships that are mutually beneficial, and increase opportunity for our students to engage in meaningful research and creative activities. Goal 5, faculty and staff. Whenever we speak of students, it's the quality of the student experience that's directly impacted by having a high-quality group of faculty and staff. Cannot do it without that. We must continually work to ensure that this is a place where people can be successful and satisfied in their work. So some of the things that we want to do in this area certainly starts with the recruitment process. We must continually, as I talked about earlier, look for ways to make our process better and more equitable in the recruitment stage. And organizations that are willing to change the way that, again, they've always done it, have been able to increase both the quality and diversity of the pool of candidates and ultimately who they hire. Providing support after recruitment also increases chances for employee success and satisfaction. So embedded in this goal is providing better and more intentional mentorship opportunities, improving the educational opportunities that support advancement. In fact, the staff advisory group at the system level has worked on one that's going to provide leadership training for staff members, and we're working on that right now, so that's a good example of where we can work together as a system. Training and educational opportunities that support the growth of supervisors. This is one we desperately need in higher education. As I mentioned the other day, I was an assistant professor in 2001 with no supervisory opportunities on June 30th. On July 1, I was the department chair overseeing 70 people, and my orientation was, here are the keys, good luck, you're in charge. We can do better than that across the SIU system and provide better opportunities for people to be prepared for those roles. Finally, rewarding actions and behaviors that support our goals. If we're going to have these as goals, how can we reward and support people who are doing the things that we need them to do? If done well, we will have more satisfied faculty and staff, reduced turnover, more opportunities for those of you who decide to stay, and a more diverse group of faculty and staff that better represent the diversity among our students and our larger society. Goal 6. Now, probably nobody but a former accountant would think that the best way to end this discussion is to talk about the exciting topic of infrastructure and financial stability. But in all seriousness, this part is critical to those other 5 goals. If we're not successful on this, it doesn't allow us to do all of those other things. So this is, in some ways, one of the most critical goals. Some examples of things we want to work on. Improving technology and searching for ways through collaboration to decrease costs. Focusing on initiatives that can increase revenue while maintaining control over costs. In other words, return on investment. Where can we invest money that will actually help us grow revenue without dramatically increasing costs? Tying our funding to our goals. One of the critical things of having a strategic plan is it helps you decide where you're going to spend your money. And the question I will keep asking is, how does this advance our goals at the system level when I'm determining on how to allocate money? And work collaboratively to develop initiatives to increase sustainability. If done well, we will maintain our financial stability, increase efficiencies, and increase resources to support all our other goals. Now, what comes next? I clearly do not want this to be a plan that sits on the shelf, which is another higher education tradition. We develop a plan and then we put it on the shelf and we come back to it 10 years later when we got to do a new one. We're actually right now setting up implementation teams. And those implementation teams will be given the charge to oversee some of these objectives and goals and to monitor our progress and make sure we're doing the things that we said we were going to do, and perhaps correcting and changing. This is a living document. As we find things that, again, are not working, maybe coming up with different ideas. So involvement in those implementation teams will be critically important to the success of the plan. We're also developing a set of metrics that will help us measure our progress. And those will be reported on a regular basis. We will be as transparent as we legally can in everything that we have. And so as much as we can share data, we will share data and share information. Finally, I would end with, there's really a role for everybody in this strategic plan. People often ask, what can I do? I think as you go through these 6 goals, you can find that you all can play a part in multiple goals in different ways. And so we really will not be successful without the involvement of everybody. So again, I want to thank you for being here today, and I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any. When we talk about that, that's again one I think where it's more, that's usually a campus level thing. And what we're really looking at is what is each campus doing, what's being successful, what's working, and how we can collaborate. And some of that also may be perhaps each institution has connections with certain organizations that are looking for employees. Sometimes it's not a major or an area that they have. And so again, can we share information when that's possible to increase those opportunities for internships and jobs after college? So the more we can actually, again, focus on the success of our graduates when they finish, but again, that's collaboration across those career counseling and other areas. Yeah. And again, this is actually something Vice President Guptep and I talk about all the time. This also gets back to what we do at the system level of getting our deans talking to each other, particularly those who are in common areas, and again, finding where, again, working together, they can provide more opportunities for all of our students across the system, and that's something we're going to strongly encourage. So again, I'm not sure I know specifically. Greece, you were going to say something?
So we of course, this is strategic plan as an implementation team, so they will come up with a plan. So you correctly identified infrastructure goal 6, but the first implementation team in that goal is the chief information officers. So they're going to come together and come up with an implementation plan. And I'm a pharmacist, so I remember things. If I can remember drug names, I remember things. So we're going to put that as one of the goals, the chief information officers, and I'll talk to you right after the meeting now, because that's exactly what they're going to do. Can we share resources at the system level in terms of software packages, those kind of things, right? And information systems, those kind of things. So that's what you were talking about,
yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
Sorry,
Yeah, so a lot of this, again, I think sometimes it gets down to what we're doing with the implementation teams. We'll look at that. But as we're talking with people, and I think that's one of the things, and we talk about this a lot, is again, is a living plan. If there's something is these implementation teams are working that you don't think we're focused on, that probably could be enhanced in some ways from cross-system collaboration, let us know about that, and we can add that to that agenda for that implementation team. So thank you for that suggestion. No, I would agree completely. I think it's talking with people who are leaving and finding out why they're leaving. In some cases, it's unavoidable. There's family issues, whatever, but there's sometimes it's things that happen that we could have done better, and we can learn from that. And again, this is one where coming up with how to do that and make sure we're doing it on a regular basis. We can collaborate across our kind of administrators across the system to make sure we're doing it, and we're learning from each other on that one too. So that is one we can collaborate on. Yeah, and I couldn't agree more with the importance of websites. I'll say two things. One is always try to not get involved with things that should be done on a campus level. So the website of each campus will be their own distinct website, so we're not going to change that in any way. That doesn't mean we shouldn't be talking across the system again about what strategies, what things seem to be working, what seems to increase applications and yield and those types of things. And we do actually, I think for the first time in SIU history, we have the marketing communication people actually working together across the system. That's never happened for us before. And now we're working on things. In fact, today's presentation was actually an example of them working together and putting this together. It wasn't just kind of one unit doing it alone. It was actually a collaboration. So I think the more we're collaborating, we can learn some of those strategies from a website development standpoint. But again, like I said, I want to make sure that we have each campus kind of allowed to do their own distinct website. I will say when it comes to websites, I think our system website is probably the weakest of all of them. So we need a lot of help at the system level with our website. It could be a lot better than it is. So I'll be looking for that expertise as well. Yeah, I think there's probably two ways to look at it. One, which is, again, you're right, some of this is more of a campus issue as far as staffing and things like that, which again, we don't do at the system level. What I would say is, and I know we've had some discussions on this, is are there systems, things like that, that we actually could, as a system, go after that would actually help facilitate that and make that easier? Again, having been at other institutions and having gone through different systems that involve with grants, some of them dramatically decreased my workload as when I was a dean because of those systems. So that's where we probably at the system level can play more of a part of seeing is there something from a kind of technology standpoint that we can do to enhance the process. If it's an individual staffing issue, then that probably is more at the campus level to address that. Other questions? Going once, twice, 3 times. All right. Well, I'll stay around for a little bit, but thank you again for taking the time to come and listen about our strategic plan today, and have a good rest of the day.